Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. This little device, interesting little contraption, is here to catch your attention. You know why? Because this is something I'm finding lacks in most people's social media posts. Let's take it back to the last week. I've been avoiding talking about politics. I gave a little bit of a sermon on the Canadian election, and that's fine. But some people won't let it go. They're still talking about it as though their lives depended on it. And I can kind of understand that. It's in the past week. The feelings are still there, the passion is still there. I understand. But what I don't understand is people all over the world are still talking about the 45th president and what he's doing. The reason I bring this up is I got a friend request from a random person today. Surprisingly, the person was not asking me for sex or to join their WhatsApp group. I blocked those suckers instantly. I'm actually getting quite a good eye for picking them out. This other gentleman didn't seem like a bad person, but then I scrolled through his posts and everything he had to do was talking about, Trump this, Trump that, blah, blah, blah. And he had no other conversation, no other frame of reference, nothing else that defined his personality. I think he had like one picture of his grandchild being born, which I would think would be a bigger deal to make in your life than what somebody who's part of the political elite is doing with their life. Anyway, it's weird that in the modern day, when we're the most disillusioned we ever have been, when people are literally staying away from the polls in droves, that people still become attached to political figureheads. And that's all they are. They're talking heads in front of everybody, trying to get you to say, rah, rah, that's my cause. It doesn't matter whether you're a conservative, a Democrat, a reform, a whatever side of the political spectrum you are. They're all pretty much wolves in sheep's clothing. But when you go to social media and that's all people define themselves by, and I go back as far as I am reasonably willing to go, and that's all you have to say about yourself, it worries me. Honestly, like, my best friend will be coming over tonight. We've been friends since we were kids, Went through high school together, went through all sorts of things together, and politics will come up. I'm mentally prepared for that because it's a big part of his life, but that's because he is actually politically involved. He's a member of one of the parties. He's ran for election. He's done all that. So he'll have some things to say about this election. And I'm his best friend. I'm willing to listen. But his life isn't defined by that. If I turn around to him and say, hey, how about those Ravens? One week they're losing left, right, and center. The next week they're kicking butt. He'll say, yeah, those are some weird plays that they got. Although he doesn't really watch football much, he'll have a regular conversation. Just bring his kids over. Our kids are going to play together. That'll probably be the topic, Hey, kid A, can you not do that? Kid B, you're being good. Kid C, which is my kid, yeah. I'll take care of her. And it'll just be two friends hanging out, letting their kids play, and just kind of, what the American dream is supposed to be. But so many people are willing to put that Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic ideal to one side to argue about politics. Realistically, how many people were converted from one political belief to another? Answer is not many. How much effort was spent on it? A ridiculous amount. The polls didn't change much. In the Canadian election, the polls showed the Conservatives leading at first until Aaron O'Toole opened his mouth. Now, no offense against him, but Canadians are very particular in what they want to hear. They want to hear that our health care is going to be there. They want to hear that we're going to have some sort of a social safety net. And after that, balance the budget and all the usual things that you're going to hear from people. It's not hard. Aaron O'Toole managed to steer the puck outside of those lines, and that's why he lost. Justin Trudeau, the narrative was against him because he called a snap election trying to get a higher percentage of seats so that he wouldn't have to compromise with other parties. That failed. We know that now. But it's been a week. You know what? Nothing changed. It's business as usual. So let's stop worrying about that and start worrying about a lot of other things. Like, for example, those people who went on the CERB and employment insurance, at this point, they're within weeks, if not days, of running out of payments. That's a lot of people who are potentially going to go homeless, run behind on their rent. And, the official party line is, hey, the economy is open. You can get a job. That's fantastic. But the reality is, we all know people are struggling to find jobs. People who are out there in high demand fields either kept their jobs or got ahead. But your average, Joe or Jill or Jagmeet or whoever it is struggling to find work. And companies are busy saying, oh, well, we can't find anybody to fill these positions. But I have a friend who, they wanted her vaccine passport, but she's been pregnant very recently and they haven't given her the vaccine. And she said, I'm sorry, I don't have the vaccine passport. I'll take a test right now and I'll get it later. Nope, they wouldn't hire her. So the companies are setting such unrealistic expectations for people. It's no wonder we have an employment crisis, which is something we've been really documenting heavily on the Silverlight Show. But no one's listening. Employment is fine. 9 out of 10 businesses are failing, but those employers are out there hiring people, no problem. Did you know that the so-called tax benefit that incentivizes employers to hire employees is a tax for your income tax? That's right. Businesses fill out income taxes too. And they don't get that benefit till the end of the year. And I haven't really looked into it, but it probably means they don't get what they're supposed to. Just like you. Your federal tax, if you get a federal tax credit, it's worth 17% of what it is. So, to give you $1,000, you're getting $170. This is why donating to charity and stuff like that is viewed favorably, because you get 17% of it back. Which means the government is still getting the lion's share of it. Pretty sneaky math that they use that goes directly against you. And in all this, people still want to argue politics for no other reason than, well, we are a so-called participatory democracy. And because of that, we expect people to participate. And people are not participating. They're simply getting mad on Facebook, turning around and saying, I don't have a party that represents me. And yeah, social media is replete with it. I even see major talk show hosts that are echoing our frustrations. What can we do when we don't feel that any of the parties represent our views? And the fact is, the parties are getting further and further away from representing any of the, I'll call them rank and file Canadians, by which I simply mean they're ordinary people like you and I. The so-called People's Party of Canada did a bit of a faceplant in this election, especially after their leader got charged. But the same token, while it was a populist platform being run by elitists, which seems to be becoming a major thing, it at least was resonating with people. There were some very passionate defenders of the PPC. In 2019, we actually got a Canadian Nationalist Party. Yeah, Anytime you hear the word nationalist, you can just imagine that guy in the 1940s with the creepy mustache and liked to raise his hand to salute people around him. They went from 3 candidates to 1 candidate. So at least their message is being put in the place that it belongs. But these fringe parties failing, I think, is mostly because they have a right-wing leaning platform, if not completely right-wing platform. And people are mostly centrist. The centrists, again, your conservatives, your Democrats, your liberals, whatever you want to call them, centrists are centrists. They're a dime a dozen. You're never going to change them. You're never going to influence them. It's just simply they have their policies, but they're going to disguise them as centrist as much as possible. And if you're standing on the fringe, you are taking a stand. You are saying, hey, I'm here to be counted because I am different. My ideas do not reflect the majority. But by doing that, you're also kind of putting yourself to one side. Let's look at the Bloc Québécois. The Bloc Québécois' entire purpose for existing is to separate Quebec from Canada. And they have formed the official opposition at one point. What was it, back in the 90s, early 2000s? Anyways, that's not the goal of the majority of Canadians. But when they're in Quebec, they have a commanding lead. Why? Because Canadians and Quebecois are passionate about what they want. And they want their rights, they want their distinct society status, and they want to know their language rights are being protected. Hard to argue against that. And as the example of Quebec shows, maybe it's time for a future party going forward to start representing more fringe clauses, especially if Justin Trudeau entertains election reform. Now, this is all fine and dandy. These are the arguments going over in the ivory towers and all those wonderful places where they're trying to figure out the next big thing. But the truth is, Facebook, Twitter, and all the various other social media, maybe not Instagram because they're too busy posting pictures of themselves there. I don't even know why I have Instagram. But Facebook and Twitter especially, people are going to put out their clapbacks and whatever the heck else that they're going to do, just simply because it's the one place they feel their voice is heard. Now, these are the key words. The one place they feel their voice is heard. These are people who maybe they support Mr. Trump, maybe they support Mr. Biden, maybe they support whoever the the libertarian candidate was. And you know what? They have a right to speak their mind. At the same token, come on, it's been almost a year at this point. Yes, it's fine to have an opinion. Yes, it's fine to, say I stand for this particular party platform and I believe in it. No problem. Once again, Silverlight is very pro-choice. I believe you have the right to believe what you want to believe. That sounded better in my head. But anyway, political beliefs are a dime a dozen. And to have such undying support for one, to me, is a sign of an unenlightened mind. I listen to everything. I do not like the party of the elites, which are the conservatives and which are the Republicans. At the same token, I will confess I have voted that way before. My mind has changed over the years. At one point, I was a member of the Young Conservatives. As you can imagine, things have dramatically changed since then. I guess I got more of a heart. And as Winston Churchill would say, I have less of a brain at this point. But hey, he's back in the 1940s and I'm sitting here in 2021. He's entitled to his opinion of me, and I'm entitled to my opinion that I still think Winston Churchill was a great leader and a man who was willing to compromise whenever possible. But that's the thing that's been lost in politics. In Winston Churchill's era, they would give each other hell on Parliament floor. They'd be debating for hours. They'd be arguing. They would use insults that in the present day wouldn't be So they would get them kicked out, would get them censored. The party whip would be employed, and all those wonderful things. Twitter would explode, Facebook would explode, and you don't want to do that. You want to have a social media manager who's savvy, who's going to put out a carefully composed statement that says Mr. Laker is not opposed to logging, but at the same token, he wants to see companies that are more responsible to the environment. Okay, that is a say nothing statement. It's kind of like pro athletes at the moment. They're being taught to speak in the most boring terms. I mean, they're being told, hey, if the other team hears you say this, they're going to be playing it all week and they're going to come after you. And we saw that last year in the Pittsburgh versus Cleveland game in the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Steelers were coming out saying the Browns is the Browns, and I see nothing but a bunch of nameless gray faces, and they got their rear ends handed to them. The same is true in politics. But please, if you have a social media presence, unless you are one of the candidates, you probably shouldn't be waving the banner all day, all year, etc. There's other interests to life. And that's one of the messages that I want to teach people. My grandmother had a wise saying, be a jack of all trades. You might not get all the jobs, but you'll be more qualified for more jobs. And that's where I'm putting my life at the present time, and my ability to be a chameleon. As I've said in a couple episodes, be the gray man, the one that can fit in anywhere, and the one that doesn't get into political discussions, doesn't do much. I've been teaching that this whole time. My Facebook wall will include a funny joke. Hey, you include a funny joke, I'm going to put it up there, but mostly it's gray man stuff. I try not to include my wife. I try not to include my daughter. I just try to make it the random musings of a madman, just kind of like the Silverlight Show is. Speaking of which, you may be wondering what that device is in front of you. Well, got a really neat function here. Let me see if I can get this all. So, how many of you guessed this? You got your beer bottle, you put your beer cap on it, put this down. See that? Puts the bottle cap on it. I didn't have a bottle cap loaded because it's an empty beer bottle. Why would I have a bottle cap on an empty beer bottle? But yes, see, you just learned something more valuable in that couple seconds than you probably did in the rest of the video. So is it worth staying to the end? I sure hope so. At any rate, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. We are always welcome to comments, so please use the comment section down below or tweet me at Silverlight Live. Please, if you're going to mention something political, keep it to the present day and not something that happened 1, 2, 5, 10 years ago. Unless it's a good conspiracy. I'm always open for a good conspiracy. And to everybody else, we hope you have a fantastic day.